Why did Noppon Saengkham beat Judd Trump at the China Open 2026? Judd Trump arrived at the China Open 2026 as one of the biggest favourites in the tournament. He was ranked among the very best players in the world, had already shown strong form during the season, and had every reason to believe that he could make a deep run in China. But his tournament lasted just one match, because standing on the other side of the table was Noppon Saengkham, a player ranked far lower than Trump, a player who was not expected to eliminate one of the biggest names in the draw. And yet, Sinkum did exactly that. The Thai player produced one of the biggest shocks of the opening round and sent Judd Trump out of the China Open before the tournament had really even begun for him. So what actually happened? Why did Trump lose? And was this simply a huge upset, or did Sinkum have the perfect game plan to beat him? The first thing we have to understand is that Sinkum did not arrive at this match without confidence. In fact, he had already done some very important work before even reaching the main event. During the China Open qualifying rounds, Sinkum defeated Michael Holt 6-3 and then destroyed Elliot Slesser 6-1 to secure his place in the main tournament. That meant he had already played competitive snooker in China. He had already adapted to the conditions. He had already won important matches, and most importantly, he had already developed a rhythm. Trump, meanwhile, came into the tournament with enormous expectations, and that difference can matter more than people realize. When you are Judd Trump, you are expected to win. When you are Noppon Saengkham playing against Judd Trump, almost the entire pressure is on your opponent. You have much more freedom. You can take your chances. You can play your natural game. And if you lose, everyone simply says, well, Trump was supposed to win. But if you win, suddenly you become the story of the tournament, and Sinkum clearly embraced that situation. One of the biggest reasons he was able to beat Trump was his composure. Against a player like Judd Trump, losing your head can destroy you very quickly. Trump is one of the most aggressive break builders in snooker. Give him an easy opening and he can completely take over a frame. Give him a second chance and he can punish you again. That is why players often try to avoid giving Trump exactly what he wants. And Sinkum understood that. He did not need to beat Trump by producing spectacular snooker every single time he came to the table. He needed to make Trump work for his chances. That is a very different approach. Instead of turning the match into a race of attacking snooker, Sinkum was prepared to be patient. He was prepared to play safety. He was prepared to wait. And most importantly, he was prepared to take advantage whenever Trump made an error. That sounds simple. But against Judd Trump, it is extremely difficult, because there is always a temptation to attack. You see an opportunity and you want to take it. You know that if you play aggressively and make the shot, you might win the frame immediately. But if you miss, Trump can punish you. Sinkum avoided falling into that trap. He made Trump earn his opportunities, and that created a completely different kind of match. The other major factor was Trump's consistency. This is probably the biggest part of the explanation. Judd Trump did not suddenly become a bad snooker player. That would be the wrong conclusion. The problem was that he could not maintain his best level for long enough. And against a player who is confident and patient, that can be fatal. Trump's greatest strength is often his ability to turn one opportunity into a huge scoring visit. But that strength becomes less effective when the opponent refuses to give him easy openings. If Trump has to start a break from an awkward position, suddenly the risk increases. If he has to play a difficult long pot, the risk increases again. If the cue ball does not land perfectly, another decision has to be made, and eventually pressure starts building. Sinkum was happy to allow that pressure to build. He did not need to dominate every frame. He only needed to stay close enough and make sure that Trump could not escape every mistake. And that is exactly how big upsets happen, not necessarily through one unbelievable performance, but through a series of small advantages. One safety, one missed pot, one poor positional shot, one frame that should have been won but wasn't, and suddenly the favorite is under pressure. This is also where Sinkum's previous experience against Trump becomes interesting. The two players had already met several times. Trump had won their previous major encounters, including a 6-3 victory at the 2025 International Championship. He had also beaten Sinkum at the German Masters and European Masters qualifying stages. So on paper, Trump had every reason to feel confident, but that history can also work in two completely different ways. For Trump, it can create confidence. He knows he has beaten this opponent before, but for Sinkum, it can create motivation, because eventually you want to prove that the previous results do not define you. And this time, the situation was different. This was not a qualifying match. This was the China Open, a major tournament, a huge stage, and Sinkum had nothing to lose. That psychological freedom is extremely important. Imagine the situation. Trump knows that losing means elimination in the first round. Sinkum knows that winning means defeating one of the biggest names in the sport. The pressure is completely different. And once Sinkum realized that Trump was not playing at his absolute best, his confidence would naturally have increased. Suddenly, the upset no longer looked impossible. It became realistic. And that is usually the turning point in matches like this. The underdog starts the match thinking, "I hope I can win." Then he sees a few mistakes. And the thought changes to, "I can win." Then he gets closer to the finish. And suddenly the favorite is the one thinking, "I have to win." That psychological shift can completely change a snooker match. And Judd Trump was forced into exactly that situation. Another important factor was Sinkum's ability to stay patient. This is something that can easily be overlooked when people look only at the final result. If an underdog beats Judd Trump, people often imagine that the underdog must have played unbelievably attacking snooker. But that is not necessarily how you beat Trump. Sometimes the best way to beat an aggressive player is to make the match uncomfortable. Slow the game down, force more tactical decisions, make the opponent think, make him play one more shot, and then one more, until eventually, concentration becomes more important than natural talent. Sinkum was willing to do exactly that. And that is why the match became a test of patience as much as technique. For Trump, the problem was that he could not simply overpower his opponent. He needed to construct the match. He needed to build pressure. He needed to win the small battles. But Sinkum kept fighting back. And every time Trump failed to convert an opportunity, Sinkum's belief increased. This is also why the scoreline should not be viewed simply as a number. The important part is what the score represented psychologically. Every frame Sinkum won made the upset more believable. Every frame Trump lost made his task more difficult. And once the match entered the later stages, Trump no longer had the luxury of making mistakes. At the beginning of the match, a missed long red might be recoverable. Later, the exact same mistake can effectively cost you the match. That is the nature of pressure. The closer you get to elimination, the smaller the margin for error becomes. And Sinkum handled that pressure better. This is perhaps the most impressive part of the victory. He was not simply playing against Judd Trump. He was playing against Judd Trump and the expectation that Trump should win. That is a completely different challenge. And instead of becoming nervous, Sinkum became increasingly comfortable. He had already beaten strong players on the road to the tournament. He had already played several matches in China. And now he had another opportunity. He took it. There is also a bigger story here. Sinkum's victory over Trump was not an isolated result. It became the beginning of an extraordinary run at the China Open. After eliminating Trump, Sinkum went on to beat Ronnie O'Sullivan as well. That means the Thai player defeated two of the biggest names in the tournament in consecutive rounds. And that changes the way we should look at the Trump match. Because if Sinkum had beaten Trump and then immediately lost his next match, it would have been easy to describe the result as a huge one-off upset. But what happened afterwards showed that he was genuinely playing at an exceptional level. He then continued his run by defeating Shaun Murphy, reaching the semifinals. So the victory over Trump was not simply luck. It was the first sign of something much bigger, and that makes Trump's defeat even more interesting. Because sometimes a player loses because he plays badly. Sometimes he loses because his opponent produces an extraordinary performance. And sometimes both things happen at the same time. In this case, it looks much closer to the third scenario. Trump did not suddenly forget how to play snooker, but he was unable to produce his best level consistently. And Sinkum was good enough to punish him. That combination is dangerous, especially in a short first-round match. There is no time to recover. In a longer tournament match, a player can sometimes survive a bad session. But in a best-of-11 first-round match, the pressure builds quickly. Lose 2 frames and you have a problem. Lose 3 and suddenly the underdog believes. Lose 4 and the favorite is in serious trouble. At that point, reputation means very little. Only the balls on the table matter. And Sinkum played the situation better. He did not care that Trump was the bigger name. He did not care about the rankings. He simply played the match in front of him. That is why this victory is so impressive. Trump entered the China Open as one of the players everyone expected to watch deep into the tournament. Sinkum entered as the outsider, but by the end of the match, those roles had completely changed. Trump was the player trying to survive. Sinkum was the player who believed he belonged there. And that is probably the simplest answer to the question, why did Noppon Saengkham beat Judd Trump? Because he made the match uncomfortable, because he stayed patient, because he took his chances, because he did not allow Trump's attacking game to completely dictate the match, and because when the pressure increased, Sinkum remained calm. Trump, meanwhile, could not find enough sustained periods of his best snooker. He had opportunities, but not enough of them were converted into momentum, and against an opponent playing with confidence, that is enough to lose a match. The biggest lesson from this result is that rankings do not win snooker matches. Reputation does not win snooker matches. Past victories do not win snooker matches. The player who handles the pressure, takes the opportunities and stays focused for the crucial frames usually wins. And on this occasion, that player was Noppon Saengkham. For Judd Trump, it was a hugely disappointing start to the China Open. For Sinkum, it was the beginning of something extraordinary. He had already knocked out one of the world's biggest stars, and he was about to face another one, Ronnie O'Sullivan. And suddenly, what looked like a straightforward first-round match for the world number 3 had turned into one of the biggest stories of the entire tournament. Noppon Saengkham had arrived in China as the underdog. He left the table as the player everyone was talking about. And Judd Trump, he was left wondering what might have happened if he had been able to find his best level just a little more consistently. Because against an opponent as confident as Sinkum, even a few small mistakes can become the difference between continuing your tournament and going home after just one match.